Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? It's that time of the week again where we jump into the deep end of the rumour mill, and we don't need our scout notepads and pens this week. We don't need to go hunting for talent ourselves this week, because there is plenty of action when it comes to all things Celtic. We've got some moves confirmed in and out from the last time we did this, so some nice updates due on the tactics board, as well as a nice preview session on all the players that we've been linked to over the last week or so, and what ones might actually have some meat on the bones. At any point in the video, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Get into the comment section, let me know your thoughts and opinions on the level and frequency, or the amount of business that we're doing at this stage of the season. What's your thoughts and feelings on it as we go through? Certainly my POV looking at all this from a distance, coming into what should be one of the biggest summers Celtic have had this century, really. And yeah, let's just get stuck straight into it, because we have had some moves all but and basically confirmed at this point, and we get a great opportunity to clean the board up here and maybe start to get a bit of an idea on how the club and how Brendan see the squad carrying on throughout the summer and into next season. Lagerbielke is all but confirmed to be at Braga now, so that one's done. We've seen Nawrocki confirmed at Hannover 96 in Bundesliga 2. That is done. We now see Nicolas Kuhn move to Como, and I think that eases this pressure that we've had on the tactics board here of trying to work out where Ben Negren actually fits in. And I think it's clear to see on this opening stage of business that Negren is just a Kuhn replacement in the squad. Yes, we can all see the clear ability he would have to be effective through the middle of the pitch for Celtic, but as the squad stands right now with the injury to Jota, we've updated the injury guys to be red. Thanks for that suggestion from the comment section. I forget who made it. But yeah, it feels like that kind of cleans that situation up ever so slightly. We've got Osmond in the building. We've seen Kenny play pre-season, and some of the chat now isn't as clear that, oh yeah, we'll definitely sell Kenny, but there might be a loan situation or whatever, so we'll see how that shakes out. We've also had Inamura confirmed to be in as well, so he comes onto the tactics board on a permanent basis. Frame and Montgomery played against Queen's Park. Palma is still in and around on the books, as is Tilio. But with those couple of moves there, as you can see, the board does kind of clean up a little bit. The squad has got a tad bit more streamlined, but with the amount of players we're linked to, we could fill this up very, very quickly, because the rumour mill has basically got us all but confirmed to be signing about 3 or 4 different players. One of them, which does feel somewhat imminent, is Shin Yamada from Kawasaki Frontale, who's a player that we've featured already on the channel. We had a great episode on the Wednesday series here. It's in the playlist, you can check it out if you missed it, with local Japanese expert Alan of J Soccer Magazine. All you guys that caught that episode seem to really enjoy it, and we got the lowdown from Alan on the style of player Yamada is, the potential ceiling that he has, and what Celtic fans should come to expect from him. He certainly had a better year last year than what he has this year, and that's maybe a little bit of a Kawasaki thing as much as a Shin Yamada thing. But at 1.5 million euros for what feels like the replacement for O rather than the replacement for Kyogo, I think could be some shrewd business. It could be very economic for the Hoops, and if we can, unlock the player that kind of burst onto the scene last year, domestically certainly, we could be onto a bit of a win for this one. A guy that's very much recognised as a penalty box forward, a bit more of an arrowhead forward, less so than Kyogo, who was maybe a bit more of that ferocious last man press, could also play out wide, could also drop deep kind of guy. Shin Yamada has been billed as much more of a striker in that regard, and that's one of the things we're really after from Celtic when it comes to the player that comes off the bench, similar to O gone by, or maybe even Giakoumakis if you want to harp that far back, where the guy that comes off the bench up front has to be a finisher, has to be a guy that can find the back of the net. We've certainly seen Adam Ida fit that bill under playing understudy to Kyogo, as it were, and as that forward dynamic kind of readjusts, redevelops and reconfigures really over the summer, I could see Shin Yamada being a decent understudy, a good, bit of firepower off the bench for the majority of this season, and I'm sure he would have to start some games depending on, the fixture pile up and all the rest of it. He's not been capped for Japan yet, but he's won the Japanese Cup and the Japanese Super Cup, and at 25 years of age, paying what seems to be double the transfer marked value for what that's worth, certainly anyway. This is a player that, we're not getting super young. He's not like an 18, 19-year-old prospect. This is a guy, we know the Japanese system now, we're quite familiar with it in terms of the age players generally get into the senior game and subsequently then where they find their peak age-wise. by comparison to the guys you find around European and really the rest of world football. So the age is just a number really when it comes to these guys. Has some experience playing wide right, but again, this is a team that we signed Rio Hatate from. They played him left back, they played him up front, they played really everywhere for them. So the Japanese teams are quite happy to try and see if there's any happy accidents that can happen, as well as football intelligence and game intelligence they gain from playing players in different positions. But certainly a guy that offers a lot of promise, is a guy that should only get better with a move to Celtic, playing in a much better team. And the J League is a league that ranks above the SPFL, and I think on a lot of metrics rightfully so, but I think the Scottish League is harder than the Japanese League in terms of that grit, that determination, especially playing for Celtic, the mental fortitude, the winning mentality that we need and we instill in any successful players that have here will only benefit him for me. Another player that feels like it could be all but done. Celtic here have got the inside track on this one, that some of the reports that Vienna are after 10 million euros are wide of the mark, and this is a transfer that is very much within our price range. This really does highlight something we've highlighted something we've highlighted on the channel before, that it feels that at this stage of the window, Brendan Rodgers has carte blanche to do any deals he can under 5 million euros, under 5 million pounds, because it does feel like we're going to have a domino effect of a few of these guys all showing up together, and they're all sub 5 million euros, and we'll kind of get onto the strategy and the optics around all that in a second, of course. But Isak Jansson was the Kuhn replacement for Vienna. They actually went out and scouted him, through quite simply just data analysis or spreadsheet for some of you guys out there. They didn't even get time to watch this guy to put the eye test on him, and they swept him up from Cartagena in La Liga 2, which is a league that we've previewed already on the channel, and he hit the ground running in a big way in Austria. Rapid Vienna are one of the bigger teams there. I've got a very colourful support, very well recognised in Austria as having the ultra culture really kind of nailed down. Not an ever-present player for Rapid Vienna through injury. They do have a sizable winter break as well in the middle of their season, so their years do tend to go in like a stage of two halves, and we can kind of see this here. He came in the January prior and did okay, a couple of appearances off the bench here, a couple of starts, a goal and an assist, and then when we come into this season before the Christmas shutdown here, as you can see, we get to December, he's played 16 games, bagging himself 5 goals and 2 assists. Not too bad at all. And considering that Vienna, although they are one of the bigger teams, have got a great support, all the rest of it. Sturm Graz, I'm sure, won the league this year as well, and we all know Salzburg are a powerhouse above a behemoth in this league, so very much they're at a disadvantage. They're kind of punching above their weight constantly, so a pretty not too bad return. I mean, I remember looking at Nicolas Kuhn's Rapid Vienna output and not being that taken by it either. So yeah, there's definitely some precedence there, precedent set. This is the second half of the season after this, as you can see, December to February switch over here. And he's done quite well. He's kind of maintained pace, he's maintained form. 4 goals and 2 assists in the final section of the season here, when they've went into a split as well and played some of the more, the top end teams or whatever going for European spots. This is a guy that profiles very effectively as being an attack based, a front foot based winger. And when you look at the profile of this guy, he feels like the best case scenario for somebody like Yang. Like Yang is somebody that we often highlight on, and I don't want you to think I'm comparing him to Yang, right? But it's just in terms of profile. Yang's a front foot player. He wants to take guys on. He's a dribbler. He wants to get into the box. It's one of the raw minerals that he brings that I give him a lot of, license for. I give him a lot of headroom to develop with. And this guy kind of has that, but has developed further in his career already. He's got under 21 caps for Sweden, predominantly a right winger, so this might be more of the Nicolas Kuhn replacement. And then we've got that Ben Negren kind of headache, that kind of, which is good. That's the sort of headache we want in the team. The more headaches like that we have, the better. He's contracted to 2028. His transfer market value is around 3.5 million, and by all accounts, that's the sort of price we'd be able to get him out of Vienna for. Does have versatility to play all across the front line. And like we've mentioned on this channel before, he came from Cartagena in La Liga 2, La Liga Smartbank, or whatever it's called these days. And that is a really high level division. I would be looking in that division for wingers. This guy might be the guy. He might play the part. He certainly does pass the eye test. He's very friendly on highlights, as it were. And we do have a bit of a track record of players from Rapid Vienna, for better and for worse. I don't think this will be one of the worst ones, of course. It would look like one of the better ones, especially being Swedish. Ben Negren, Henrik Larsson, Johan Matt. We've got a connection with some of these guys, especially the Japanese lads as well. And if you're going to bring in foreign players, ones that have that thread to the club are always a bit more interesting, I would say. So this is a move I'd be quite interested in seeing develop. I think this is a player that at Celtic could do even better. But on top of Shin Yamada and Giuseppe Ambrosino, who have also been linked to the Napoli Italian under-21 international forward, you then start to quickly recoil and think, hold on a minute, is this Champions League level players we're IDing here? Now, Ambrosino has actually been playing at Serie B level for the last couple of years, you know, if you exclude these Napoli under-19 appearances. That gets him to 83 senior appearances in Serie B, which I think of the European top 5 leagues, their second tiers, I would put Serie B at the bottom of that list, to be quite honest with you. It's a very big division. There is some good players that come out of it or whatever, but it's, yeah, I'd say out of the top 5 the top 5 leagues, second tiers, it's probably just about, you know, the weakest of the bunch. But all the same, great experience to have under his belt at the ripe age of 21 himself. And for Frosinone last year, who were a team that finished marginally out of the relegation zone in Serie B, they did not do well at all. He got significant minutes across the year, and he did scatter his appearances with goals and assists. Again, a guy very highlight friendly. I watched a fair bit of Euro under-21s. This guy did not come onto the radar for me. The goal against Germany, of course, does kind of write a headline or two because of how tight that game was and everything around it. By all accounts, all the experts reporting on this guy, he's a bit of a set piece taker. He's versatile. He's very creative and can fill into a number of different positions across the front line. But, you know, we're not going to feature Balikwisha in this video, but it feels like Balikwisha is progressing and moving forward. And it feels like all 3 of these deals are kind of in the offing somehow, somewhere as well. So it's really difficult to get a read on who are we actually after, what ones will we actually get over the line, and, you know, do they actually improve the team? He's contracted at Napoli until 2026, so he's coming into the final 12 months of his contract. Some other teams in Italy are interested as well, but by all accounts, if Celtic are interested, we would be his preferred destination. A very well decorated Italian youth international, as you can see as well, in a number of different positions. And yeah, like, this is a guy that's been around the block in Italy, well known in those circles. And I don't mind us signing these types of wonder kids, because even if they come into the team or not, what we've been very bad at when we look at this here and we think about the Lagerbielkes and the Rockies, these guys might actually still pan out like a Bernabe did, for example. But we're still hanging on to guys like Kuhn and Palma, and there's a few other guys like that are definitely going to be wastes of money. We're already losing money on Lagerbielke, but that might get rescued if we have a good sell-on clause or whatever. But we do want to have you know, an allotment of development players that we might not use too much, but we might sell, we might loan out, and we might be able to just moneyball our way into, you know, adding into the bank balance, making it even easier for us to spend more and more money window upon window. And to do that without selling your best players is the kind of trick with these guys here that are coming in, because if Nawrocki and Lagerbielke, when selling clauses and all things are told, actually drop in a profit for Celtic on top of the star-studded ones like the O'Reillys and the Frimpongs and the Van Dijks and whatever, that then is a comprehensive transfer strategy from Celtic. So I don't mind a lot of these transfers and a lot of these players being brought in, because if we even drop the likes of these guys in, Balikwisha, Yamada, Ambrosino and Isak Jansson here, again, when you lay that against the rest of the squad, very few of us would expect Tilio to be back next year. We also don't expect much from Palma. A lot of people expect Yang to go out. And if we just move the midfielders to one side so we can see things a bit better, Johnny Kenny, again, the same. We don't expect him to be hanging around for too much longer. Depending on the versatility of Ambrosino, Balikwisha and Jansson maybe offer something the same. Like, this is a pretty exciting attacking department if all of these moves were to click in. And although individually none of them are particularly inspiring in terms of like, oh, this is us going for the Champions League, this is us like really leveling up, big statement of intent transfers. Like, that is a really exciting, you know, attacking department we've got here for depth, for quality, for up and coming players. And to really push the level, ultimately, of all the players involved, you should expect to get more out of the individuals here when they're competing in this kind of wider group. But then I think that raises a really interesting question on, if we get all these guys over the line, if we get most of them through, we play a Champions League qualifier, we get through, we get that big war chest kind of green light, that green tick come through, that we can go and make the marquee purchase. it really can't be up front anymore at that point. You would think, it is full at the inn. There's no more parking spaces up there, and it would have to be somewhere else. And then most people's kind of attention or their thoughts will go to defence, of course. We've been linked to Justin De Haas, who's a Dutch player currently playing in the Portuguese league. And Justin De Haas has been a pretty tidy centre-back, it must be said, in the Portuguese league and in the Croatian league. But this is one, on top of the batch there of players we've just looked at, again, doesn't scream Champions League ambition to me overall. If we look at where the season just started here back in August, a very successful centre-back in this league. Not at one of the big teams, so has a lot of questions asked to him defensively, but gets goals, gets those important defensive actions like clearances off the line, and seems to be a very well-rounded defender. At the age of 25, is still to come into his prime, you would think, as well. But we haven't played at NK Lokomotiv in Zagreb, haven't played at Famalicão. This guy's not got any of that kind of top-end experience, as it were, so it would have to be a real budget pickup for me. And given the fact that he's right-footed, the sort of transfer fee we'd be looking at, this guy feels... It says here he's left-footed. I've seen somewhere else that he was right-footed, so let's see where he is actually built here. He might even be a backup left-back looking at this. But this guy feels like he has to be a backup player, Brendan Rodgers has already been quoted that Inamura will be evaluated, and he's not really been purchased with the thoughts of the first team coming into it. Is a guy that's been on the radar, has been around the likes of Zagreb, PSV, AZ, clubs that do have those European aspirations, does have some of the youth international caps to his name as well, but doesn't feel like a signing that comes in and disrupts the natural order or the defence of the back four as we find it at the moment. But this guy as a backup, as a rotation player for Tierney and or maybe even at left centre back, depending on, again, he could progress quite significantly. It's not hard to imagine at all. And then this is a nice move. I don't mind this at all. A guy with good enough kind of chops. He's played the Benficas and the Portos enough times where he's not scared of them. But I don't think this answers many questions outside of being potentially a backup to Tierney. Because like I say, when I looked at this earlier, I thought he was right-footed, and I thought just quite simply, oh, that's brilliant. The Rocky out, this guy in. That would be a lovely kind of dovetail kind of situation or whatever. So yeah, I've just kind of maybe... remembered that wrong coming into the video today, so apologies for that. But our right-footed centre-back Celtic have been linked to is Etienne Youte of Le Havre. Now, Le Havre last year were in Ligue 1 after being very dominant in winning Ligue 2 the year before, and this is a guy that didn't come onto my radar when it comes to looking at Ligue 1 centre-backs, because Le Havre got absolutely roasted, and this guy didn't really stand out statistically as being a guy that was going against the grain in that regard. He's been sent off here quite early on in the season, which has had a real negative impact. The game against Brestois, they ended up losing 2-0. He got yellow card suspended by the time we get to the end of January, and in the final kind of furlong of the season here, this guy did not do well at all, sadly for him. He had an error led to goal in a 2-1 win, actually, so it didn't really cost his team much. Away to Lille. Lille were very good this year. He scored an OG at home to Nice in a significant loss. Gave away a penalty in a significant loss at home to Toulouse. And he also gave away a penalty in a significant loss away to Lyon as well. So a guy that didn't really jump on the radar for me, certainly as a guy that's a up-and-coming prospect, somebody we should be certainly looking at. But on further evaluation, I can kind of see the profile. I can see how this guy has came on the radar for Celtic. He's got some French youth international credentials. He's valued at €7 million. He's coming into the last year of his contract, and that means a discount is available. They have also not had a great season, obviously, so cashing in is something they're going to be looking at. And guys that do get into the French youth national team set up, in my experience, are always pretty good. Seeing that this guy was formerly in the Man City network at Troyes, before then going to Inter Milan. Guys that go to Olympiacos always confuse me, because Greek football, I think, is just nowhere near, like the scene, for youth players coming through or whatever. So that's just always a weird one. But seeing that kind of pedigree, that kind of background, does fill me with a bit more hope. And again, as a backup to Carter Vickers, as another strong centre-back to come into this squad, this is a guy that has won Ligue 2, so he's been a title winner, he's been at the top of the table, he's been a strong defender, he's had to really backs against the wall defend this year in Ligue 1 for Le Havre, so he's definitely got some of that experience for when we're going to be backs against the wall defending in the Champions League or whatever, which is fine. But this is a bit more of a, he does tick some boxes and whatever, but for the transfer value, the sort of club we're shopping at or whatever, again, is this the best move? I'm not too sure. But if we imagine here that Inamura is going to go out on loan or not be used, between Montgomery and Frame, I think it's probably safe to imagine one of them might be in the fold somewhere, with Brendan Rodgers saying, we'll look within for solutions when we can. I thought Montgomery looked quite the part Welsh, who knows what will happen with him. Dane Murray the same. But adding in De Haas and Youte here, does this level up the defence? I think it would. I think it would give us a lot more strength and depth, a lot more strength in, yeah, depth is probably the only way of putting it, you know, where there's not as much reliance on Vickers. If we do have this amount, even Scales in a worst case scenario, we know he can do that domestically. And if these guys can step up to really, if in De Haas's case, push the left centre-back level up, potentially, also maybe offer some cover for Tierney, depending on what he can actually offer, that could be quite a shrewd move, although, like I've said already in the video, without being overly ambitious. And like looking at the board here, like if this was the team that we finished the window with, or not even finished the window with, but you know, got through the Champions League qualifier with, the gaping hole is still in midfield, isn't it? Is there a real backup for Tierney? I think in this picture there probably just about is, but the real gaping hole is still in midfield for another top level guy to come in to push the level, because although we've got a best free midfield here, similar to what we were mentioning with up front and now we're looking at in defence, Celtic need more than 3 best 11 calibre guys. We need an extra 1 or 2 on top of that in midfield, to say the least, to push the level and to cover against transfers, injury, suspensions, that sort of thing. So maybe that's the way the chips are going to fall here, where we get a bit more, you know, maybe I'm being a bit optimistic imagining all these guys are coming in, but by all accounts, Balikwisha, Jansson, Yamada, all feel very close. The reports of Ambrosino have only came out as a result, you know, off the back of these reports feeling like they're moving on. So it's hard to imagine that this is a frivolous link, as it were. We have only inquired about them, so it's maybe just preliminary stages, might be something for a future window in that regard. And then the centre backs here as well. It sets the squad up really nicely, and like I say, there's just still this big gaping hole for a marquee top level midfielder to come in and then really just knit this all together. But I do think Celtic are on the brink of playing with fire. We've went through windows before where we've spent under 5 million on everyone and signed like 9 guys, and maybe like one of them's worked out. The overall profile and level of these players that we've put in this raft today in the video does feel a lot higher than what we normally look for, and it does give me a sort of confidence in that regard that we're going to get this window right. And Brendan Rodgers does have a good kind of handle on, alongside with Tisdale and everyone else that's involved, what's required to really beef up the second order, the second tier in the squad, while also kind of looking for those top end guys that still could come in as of yet kind of unidentified, I suppose. But with the money coming in for Kuhn, with the money coming in for Frimpong, Lagerbielke, Nawrocki, there's a lot of positive movements to the Celtic bank balance. It might be a bit ambitious or optimistic to think like a lot of these moves happen, the majority or all of them, but there's not really any reason that they shouldn't. If we want all these guys, we kind of do need them all. We have the money for them, and they all seem pretty chuffed to come to Celtic. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had a real domino effect of like 3 or 4 of these moves knocking off the back of one another quite quickly, and we could see ourselves be Champions League qualifier ready sooner rather than later. I hope you enjoyed the video today, guys. Let me know your thoughts and feelings down below in the comment section. Of course, is this ambitious enough, or is this a 2-stage window? Is this everything for us? You know, I'm really interested to see what you guys think and feel. Please do hit the subscribe button for more content like this on screen, and now some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. We're very close to 13,000 subscribers. We're aiming for 18,888, and we cannot do that without your support. Hail, hail, and moan the hoops.